This is something that all of us should be ashamed of. Here in the heart of India, in the country's capital, 3 children have died because they starved to death. That's right, they hadn't eaten. The sisters, aged 8, 4 and 2, were declared dead in a hospital on Tuesday. A second autopsy today has confirmed that they had indeed starved to death. They hadn't eaten for 8 days. Doctors on the case say that this was gross malnutrition, that they'd never seen anything like this before. The deaths have also caused a full-blown political war. So tonight we're asking whether India has done enough in the fight against hunger. And joining us on the program this evening, we have with us from the Aam Aadmi Party spokesperson Richa Pandey Mishra, who's joining us from Delhi tonight. Here in the studio with us, social activist and writer Harsh Mandar, Anjali Bhardwaj, also an activist, both of whom have dealt extensively with these issues, and Rajesh Sharma, who's a member of the BJP. Harsh Mandar, let me take this to you first. This comes as a complete shock, and an even bigger shock, because we hear about these reports, say, from Jharkhand, and we don't expect something like this to happen in Delhi, which is the national capital. Did this shock you equally?
It has not shocked me. I've worked with homeless people for the last 15 years, and I've been trying to say this over and over and over again. I was just telling her I've just had a grandson, and I can't enjoy him. I confess to my daughter, because I just feel that we built a world where, you know, where we are tolerating the most unacceptable conditions of life for people we see around us every day, and we don't care. So I think that's the biggest picture. But there are 3 or 4 very quick things that I wanted to say. Firstly is this whole business of autopsy, cutting open the baby's stomach, the second autopsy, trying to prove that there wasn't any, we've argued over and over again, don't do this humiliation. The point is not whether the child had a little bit of food or not. The point is, has she lived without food for long periods of time? It's an additional humiliation. It is not necessary to prove it, but it's horrible that even with those 2 things, they couldn't find even that much food. So that is one.
That's an interesting point. Never seen it like that.
The second thing, and so I'm saying, in fact, we should have a protocol of doing what we call verbal autopsies. Find out what there was food, whether there wasn't. Don't humiliate and cause this trauma again. That's number 1. Number 2 is that we have forgotten that there are about 100 million people who are circular migrants. There's 100 million people in this country who are so poor that they keep traveling around the country. So they don't have, there's no rights that are recognized for these people. So they have a ration card somewhere, hopefully, but they can't use it because 11 months they're out here. Now, the NFSA has ensured that in less than 1 day's wage, you can get your full month's food at 2 rupees, 3 rupees. That was supposed to be. It's not available to them.
And these are 100 million people that you're talking about, who keep moving around.
And so we're talking about portability of rights. I mean, it should not matter. I show my ration card from Khagaria or somewhere in Bihar, and they should just accept it. Don't let us have. How does it matter if some accounting Bihar has a little less and Delhi has a little more? I mean, this is something we haven't resolved. We don't care. That's it. And a child should be allowed to walk into any school at any feeding time or any Anganwadi and not be turned away on any grounds. That's another thing. These are simple solutions. We should have community kitchens like Jayalalitha had. These are things that let us not express surprise and outrage. Let us just accept we did not care, we do not care, and we will not care.
All right. Well, that's actually very bluntly put by you, Harsh Mandar. And Richa Pandey Mishra, the question then is that, is it that our governments don't care, that the system doesn't care, that we've come to a point where we see 3 children die because they didn't get enough to eat in the national capital?
First of all, I think this whole issue is an issue of our collective failure, and it is not just a Delhi issue or a issue of a state. It is a national issue, and it is a Delhi issue also. So I take responsibility of the fact that it is our failure, a collective failure. And the fact, there are 2 parts of this debate or this discussion. One is what happened to these 3 children, how all of them, passed away together, and what is the situation of the mother, where is the father, he has been unemployed, he has a drinking habit. All this kept aside, there is another issue of that we have to provide for basic food for everyone in this country, in this city, in this state. And somewhere when we are looking at this horrific situation, I live 100 meters away from Mandavli where this incident has happened, and I am shaken when we come to know in our country or in our city that somebody doesn't have food. Our neighbors also offer, and that has been the tradition of the city and the state and everywhere in the country. And I think we came to know through during the investigation that the neighbors did offer some food, but the children were at such a pitiable state, they were not able to take that amount of food also, and they were vomiting and they were having loose motions continuously. So it is a systematic failure. It makes me sad, and it really makes me angry also that we were not able to save those 3 kids. But now what we can do about it, what is the current situation? We have to find the father where he is. Mother is in a situation where she is not able to say anything.
Make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else.
Mentally unstable, it seems.
I think the biggest thing now will be that you have to make sure this doesn't happen again. This can't be allowed to happen. And you know, I want to ask Mr. Sharma of the BJP who is here, that I know that there's been a lot of finger pointing on this, as there is on everything in this country. But when you look at the statistics about India, the statistics from UNICEF, for instance, they are quite alarming. About 1/3 of Indian children are stunted, which means that their bodies are not as developed as they should be. That means they are not having enough food. According to UNICEF, there are more children under the age of 5 who die in India than anywhere else in the world. That's about 1.5 million children a year who die in India, 4,500 children a day. This is a figure that should alarm all of us as Indians. This is not about AAP, it's not about BJP, it's not about Mr. Modi. This is what the reality is. So are we doing enough in this fight against hunger?
It is a reality, and it is shameful, and it have been in past since ages, and it's still continuing. Though I can say that you would have seen the data that the poorest of poor, the numbers are growing, were growing in past, have come down drastically, and the government have given the data that poorest of poor have decreased in last few years.
That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the malnutrition of children. Children are dying in this country of hunger in the 21st century.
Yeah, it is really bad, and that was the commitment of our government when it came into power. The very first day our Prime Minister told that we are totally dedicated towards the needy, the poor, the ones who need it. And at the same time, today when I hear their heads should have been shaken and hang in dismay, in sadness, in grief-stricken way, but they are trying to justify. At the same time, they should not justify. It is happening throughout the country. It is capital. Delhi is the capital of the country, and a sad news, 3 girls who are even going to school, the one of them is going to school, getting midday meal or not. How can she die if she is going to school, a government school?
I'm asking you what we're doing as a nation to combat this problem, because this is not just a Delhi problem, this is a national problem. The statistics say that there are 3 lakh children in India that die every year because of starvation. They don't get food to eat. And we are talking about being the fastest growing economy in the world. Does that make sense?
I'm saying that previously every government have...
I'm talking about this government. I'm not talking about previous government.
I'm saying that they have accepted that it never used to reach the poor and needy the way the benefits were there. This time we have planned inclusion, accounts are there, direct benefit is running to their accounts.
Then why are people still dying? That's my question.
It is coming down. It is coming down.
Is
if you take the data every year...
I'm looking at the data right now.
Since last 2-3 years,
this is not good data. So what has changed? Anjali, okay, let's objectively look at it. Are we better off today? Are our kids better off today than, say, I don't know, 10 years ago, 7 years ago? Do you have a ballpark that you can give us?
Look, Nidhi, let me first say that sometimes I wonder what will it take for us to recognize that there's a real problem. You know, there is data, you've given us the data. that there is a real problem and recognize that this is something that's happening to children across the country. Of course, in the national capital, this issue has come up now, and it's really shameful that it has happened. But like Harsh said, this is not the first time things like these are happening. In Jharkhand, in the last 1 year, there have been 14 starvation deaths. Today, we are hearing about these 3 children dying of starvation in the national capital. This is a real problem, the problem of hunger, the problem of malnutrition, and it needs to be addressed. Now, what does one need to do? And we need to move to solutions. Some, the question of this wasn't happening at that time, I don't want to indulge in that. The reality is that we have the National Food Security Act. The purpose behind getting that law was to ensure, and it has provisions, it has strong provisions for ensuring that children get meals. There's the ICDS, there's midday meals, there is the public distribution system. Yes, there is a problem which has been recognized by people. We are talking about whether things have improved now or not. Before coming to power, we had heard even Mr. Modi saying that the 5 kilograms of grain per person that is being given is not adequate, and we recognize that, we agree with that. We'd hoped that in the last 4.5 years that would have gone up. The allocations for food need to go up. Why are there families today that don't have ration cards when they live in such poverty? Because then we are told there's not enough quota.
Is it too much red tape? Is it too much bureaucracy?
There's not enough budget allocation. There's not enough budget allocation at the center. There's not enough allocation at the state. And I think what needs to be recognized is by the governments is that it is their moral obligation, their responsibility to make sure that these kind of things don't happen. Whose development are we talking about finally otherwise? So if I may just say that in Delhi today, there are a total of 72 lakh beneficiaries who get ration. And there are millions more who have got left out of this food security net. These children, there have been fact findings today also where even civil society members have gone and checked, and they're not even able to make sure that they have a ration card. So can families like these be kept out of the food security net, and can we then expect that these children will survive? Food has to be provided, and it has to be accounted for. There has to be accountability.
Okay, Rajesh, you had a point.
One thing very categorically, in capital, if it is in a very remote village, if you see that the person was not having ration card, it can be possible, though it is not fine in country like India. But in capital, in the heart of the country, if you see this type of thing, the person not having ration card, a person, the autopsy says that they were on starvation from 8 days, it is really shameful, it is really great tragedy, and it need to be countered, and the government should open eyes and should act now. This should not happen in future.
Can I ask you that you would concede that all governments need to open their eyes?
Both
up and the
all
center?
Governments, I don't deny. But having this in a capital, is it not that shameful?
So, Harsh Mandar, I want to ask
ridiculous.
you, there was a piece, in fact, that Vikram Patel wrote in the Indian Express today, which was very sort of well written, and he said, and he's right, he says that when you talk about starvation deaths in India, there is a hysterical reaction first from most news anchors. I use the word most. And there's also a hysterical reaction from those in power. Yeah. We don't want to admit that we have a problem of hunger, and that is where the problem begins.
It absolutely does. It happened, I mean, the tragedy is that they actually couldn't find a little bit of grain inside the children's stomach. If they had, we would have gone into that whole cycle that no, this was not starvation, they died of something else, which is what
do you think happened with this family?
I mean, its deprivation was that extreme. But the platitude and this temporary outrage, it will really flicker out. I mean, literally, I mean, lynching is forgotten in 5 days. This will be forgotten in 3. So I'm just so let me just say, if we really are serious about it, we have extreme rural poverty. People are leaving their villages and they come into the cities. Everyone has a right to be here. Let us make provision that everybody who has a ration card anywhere in the country is able to draw grain. I mean, let that
from
be
anywhere.
From anywhere.
Yeah.
That should be.
It's actually shocking that that's not the case.
And a child who is small should be able to walk into any ICDS center or into a school, even if she's not studying there and getting food. I try to put into the National Food Security Act one line, and I feel if we can bring it back, no child shall be turned away from any feeding center on any grounds anywhere in the country. I mean, something like that. We have to, because any rules that you have, any gatekeeping you have, will keep out the most vulnerable. But one other thing that, you know, he was talking, and this is a failure as much of the UPA as it is of the present government. It's only sort of further declining. I want to say that in the year 2000, there's a global hunger index. India was at 85. Now we have gone down to 100, and every year we're getting lower and lower.
Yeah, in fact, we have those statistics playing out on the
And do you know that India is now in the proud company, you know, the only countries in Asia that are as bad in India, I mean, Nepal, which is much poorer, has done better. Bangladesh at half our per capita income has done better. India is in the proud company of East Timor, Pakistan, I think Pakistan's now
North
finally,
Korea, I think,
and Afghanistan. So if that, and this is from 2000 onwards, so this is our highest period, you know, economic growth is down there, hunger is going like this in the comparative terms. If, you know, we have to recognize, and you know, when the two reports came out, Global Hunger Index and Ease of Doing Business, everybody was talking about it, you know, anchors and the Prime Minister writing.
But not the social indices.
But when Global Hunger Index that we've fallen further, there was no commentary. No one wrote any letters to any chief secretary. No one cared. So I think that we have to recognize that it represents a kind of society we have become.
Well, Richa, let me ask you a quick last question. Has the AAP government been able to identify what the failure was with this particular family and what you can do to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, though the investigation is still on, and today the Deputy CM and Honorable CM has met all the departments, but it looks like this is primarily a failure on the part of ICDS, which is the Anganwadi system which we have, and we are aware, we have come to know that 30 families in that areas do not have ration card. As our co-panelist has mentioned, that ration card, making of a ration card is also a big deal when people migrate and immediately they are not able to get their ration cards made. So we have to identify and we have to fill these gaps, because of which such situations are occurring in Delhi at least, and I am sure that we will be able to sincerely fill those gaps.
Well, we certainly hope so, and we certainly, I think, need to get to the bottom of this and really find out what happened, follow through on that, because we can't let this happen again. But perhaps if this issue is now flagged in the mainstream media the way that it has been in the last 24 hours, Harshmander, I at least hope that these statistics, when they are flagged publicly, generate some outrage, some backlash to hopefully let the government pay a little more attention to this. So thank you to all of you for joining us. Thank you.